This video will take you through the calibration for the DIY PO2 controller from Rebreather World. Turn it on by taking away the magnet that holds it in the off position so that you always have a fail-safe to on. In other words, any kind of a lost magnet and your unit won't turn off. As it goes through the first parts of the splash screen, it stops at the point here where you can set the intensity for your HUD lights. We push button 3 to set, and we can make them by sequential presses. You can get them real nice and bright. Or we can take them all the way down to where they pretty much just about out. When you get them about where you want them, push the "It's OK now" button, and that lets you go on to calibration mode. So we push button 3 to keep going through our routine. Gives you a description of what your button functions are going to be. Gives us a battery level. No sense in calibrating and going on if our battery's dead or too low to want to dive on. We're now in calibrate mode for the primary. Notice in the HUD that the LEDs, instead of being all of them on, which is a test, they're now on in a big C shape, letting you know that you're in a calibrate mode. And notice that the green is on the cell 1 so that we know we're in primary calibrate mode. Our display gives us millivolts and tenths of a millivolt, looking at 47.7, and a PO2 showing of 1.002. We have tenth of a percent resolution here. This rebooted, of course, because it saves its settings with the last settings, and it's running on a cell simulator, so it isn't going to change between. As your cells age, you'll gradually see that your numbers, generally speaking, you'll see your numbers coming down. When they get really bad, though, they may jump up. Keeping track of what your millivolts were and what your PO2 was showing is a good way to keep track of the condition of your cell. To calibrate, we know you have to know what your known gas is in the loop, and you calibrate your PO2 display until it matches. So let's assume we have something on the order of about 99%, because that's pretty accurate for what we can get from flushes. So we'll just drop this guy down, and we're 99.7. That's going to be a good place to start. We'll do the same thing for the next cell. Set him right there on that same range. Same thing for the third cell. So we're good to go. Then we'll move on. We have the option, if we know something went funny or suspected we just didn't have a good flush, we have the option to push button 1 to redo them, or we can push button 3, which moves us on. We review and decide. There's our review. We're good with what we got, and we'll move on to the secondary calibration. Notice now as we go to secondary calibration that the lights and the LEDs in the HUD shift to a C shape kind of backwards, indicating that we're still in a calibrate mode, but this time we're calibrating on secondaries, and we need to look over at the secondary display. To calibrate cell 1, again, we use the same system that we used before. We can use the down button to move them down, and the up button to move them up. Finish with cell 1, press the next button and move on to cell 2. We have a down and an up. We go on to cell 3. We'll set him right there, and we'll move on. We have the option again at this point. We can go back and redo the secondaries if we suspect we did something wrong or didn't have a good flush. Or we can just go on and review and make sure we're happy with what we got. We'll push the review button. It reviews our primary values again. Our secondary values stay. We get one more option to go back, and if we want to recalibrate, if we're happy, we just push the button 3. Before we enter dive mode, it gives us what our settings at, what our HUD point set at for default, what our O2 set point is set at for default should we want to enable our auto O2 option. We can either immediately change them if we don't like what we have, or we can push button 3 to accept. So for now, since this was all about calibration, we'll accept and we'll show going into dive mode. Notice that in dive mode, here we are, gives us our battery voltage, gives us our set point. Backlight automatically goes out. We have to go into options if we want to permanently enable that. And we have our millivolt settings so that we're always at all times. We see our PO2, our millivolts, our battery voltage, and our set point. And we see whether our O2 control system is either in manual or in automatic mode, and whether our backlight is turned on or off. Obviously, since we're on a cell simulator and we're at 1.0 for a PO2, and our set point for the HUD is at 0.7, our HUD's showing us that we're way over where we want to be. In the next video, I'll show you how to go into the options and make your settings. Thanks for watching.